The Four Talent Giants, National Strategies for Human Resource Development across Japan, Australia, China, and India. A special discussion today with Professor Gi-Wook Shin from Stanford on this new book that he's released about development patterns and talent development in four very important countries. This today on The Impossible State.
North Korea is the impossible state. It's a place that stumped leaders and policymakers for more than 3 decades. It has a complex history, and it has become one of the United States' top national security priorities. Each week on this show, we'll talk with the people who know the most about North Korea.
So in a bit of a departure from our focus on North Korea, specifically during this podcast, today I have with me from Stanford University, a dear friend of mine and an accomplished scholar, Gi-Wook Shin, whose recent book, The Four Talent Giants, looks at the development patterns and examples seen in Japan, Australia, China, and India, and how they have enabled the remarkable economic development. Professor Shin is the William J. Perry Professor of Contemporary Korea in the Department of Sociology, a senior fellow at the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies, the former director of the Walter H. Shorenstein Asia Pacific Research Center from out of Stanford, and the founding director of the Korea program since 2001. In 2004, Dr. Shin also launched the new Taiwan program at APARC, and he's focused over his career on historical, comparative, and political sociology research, concentrating on social movement, nationalism, development, democracy, migration, and international relations. A lot of topics of very great interest here in the United States and abroad, and I thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
So what motivated you to pursue this topic in particular, particularly within the context of other work you've done in this realm?
Okay, first of all, I'm very happy to be here again. This is the first book of mine that doesn't include any chapter on Korea. But I think that there are some both professional and personal motivation. So professionally, I've been trying to, understand how, many Asian countries became economic powerhouse. So if you look at, total GDP, these days, among top 5, okay, 3 are from, Asia. Okay, China is number 2, Japan number 4, and India number 5. So as a scholar, you have to, ask, what happened, right? And because if you look at Japan, China, India, for example, they have very different history, culture, institution, but they were able to achieve economic success, over the decades. So that's sort of my intellectual question. But personally, I came to United States in 1983 for graduate study, more than 4 decades ago. And then I was going back to Korea initially, but then I'm still staying in the States. So from a conventional perspective, I could be considered case of brain drain for South Korea, and then brain gain for United States. I'm trying to overcome this binary zero-sum understanding of talent flow, because there are so many people in this country, like myself, coming from China, India, Korea, and so on. Then they never return to their home country, but still they are trying to help both their home and host. So I think that's sort of my personal motivation in writing this book.
So your framework suggests that there are strategies these countries have pursued in talent policies that deliberately seek to either develop homegrown expertise or bring in external expertise, or kind of a fusion of those two. Why is it so significant, talent policy? What is it mainly doing to help shape the economic development opportunities for a country?
Okay, certainly when you're understanding economic development, I mean, you got to understand, capital, technology, trade, many other factors. But I think fundamentally, it's a human resource or human capital that really made those possible. Okay, so I think every country is trying to, utilize, human capital for their own economic development. But the way they maybe nurture, attract, manage, their talents are quite different. I mean, that's why I have chosen, 4 different countries, because they all utilize human resource for their development, but the way they utilize were quite different. So I think that's my main argument in this book.
So your framework is broadly built around what are called the 4 B's.
Yes.
In terms of brain train, brain gain,
circulation,
brain circulation, and brain linkage. Could you walk through those and what you mean by those?
Sure. So I developed what I call 4 B's, as you mentioned, brain, train, gain, circulation, and linkage. And in my book, I'm using analogy of financial investment, because when you make your financial investments, you have a certain portfolio. Whether it's stock, real estate, cash, and so on. This is maybe in a crypto. So, and then, you don't want it to focus only one. You want it to diversify your portfolio and also rebalance, over time. I'm trying to argue that, talent investment, in a way, quite similar. There are 4 key components. Those are 4 B. So, brain train basically, nurturing your own, talent, your own people, through education, training. But in most cases, it's not enough to have only your own, talent. So you may have to import foreign talent to supplement certain sectors. Okay, that's what I call, brain gain. And brain circulation, you send your talent abroad for education or employment, and then you bring back. Okay, that's kind of brain circulation. And brain linkage is something that are fairly new, and that's kind of basically you don't bring back your people; they may stay, just like myself, but still you can engage your diasporic talent for your home development. So, they can play bridging role transnationally between home and host countries. So that's what I call brain linkage. And then every country has to mix all 4 B's for their portfolio.
So these people can be scholars that go abroad to acquire greater information. They can be technicians or engineers working in cutting edge technology sectors. They can be teachers who go on a sabbatical or some type of exchange and come back home. It's how knowledge and know-how crosses borders and is spread and proliferated in a way that kind of all ships rise in the process of this knowledge or information diversely held in 4 major countries, kind of crosses borders and is applied as needed.
Right. So that I think participating in global talent market is very important. That's why talent flows is very important for other any country. So without that, your talent may be stagnant.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, it's probably time to look at these 4 countries and how they uniquely either pursued one of these or a mix of these. And I think it's also kind of useful to know this is a framework that you have developed. It's probably wasn't going through the minds of people pursuing these at the time, but as you look at them retrospectively and you look at options going forward. This is a great framework.
Right.
So you start with Japan.
Yeah.
What's the lesson? What route did Japan pursue? Initially, here we saw a country that was like a remarkable success story after World War II.
Right.
And they seem to have hit a roadblock,
Right.
a crisis. Could you get into that and how it fits
Sure.
within your framework?
Sure. Okay, so for Japan, for its talent portfolio, okay, brain drain was key element. Okay, that's one reason I chose Japan for this book, because as you know, for Japan, homegrown talents are very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so for example, like for Korea or even China, getting PhD from Stanford, it's a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for Japan, it doesn't count that much.
Right.
So if you like to be a professor at the University of Tokyo, you better get a PhD in Tokyo University.
It's not just the prestige of the degree, it's a
Right.
degree to which you've spent time disconnected
Right.
from counterparts and contemporaries in
Right.
that field.
So, sometimes they may send people to study abroad, but very short term, like just like 1 year, maybe 2 years, not like for a PhD or long-term, working experience. So, in my book, I look at recipients of Nobel Prize in Natural Science. I mean, still, Japan is number 2 after United States. Okay, most of them were homegrown talent. That's quite amazing. I mean, some of them got postdoc in American universities, but I think majority got PhD from Japanese university. So Japan has well-developed system of education and training. So they are able to produce excellent homegrown talent in the 60s and 70s and 80s. So I think that's the main secret to Japan's success.
But it's also a glass ceiling when they don't bring in outside talent because they can't take the next step up in some of these more advanced areas.
Right. So I think this model, faced 2 main challenges. One was a demographic crisis. So in order to produce robust homegrown talent, I mean, you have to have your own population to grow, constantly. But as you know, I think Japan was the first advanced nation facing a demographic crisis. So that really, hit its model of talent development, very hard. The other one, as Japanese became more developed, I mean, they became much more comfortable just staying at home. And then, they don't want to go out inside because, to be honest, it's quite challenging to learn foreign language and making adjustment to, the environment. So I think that's why I think, on the one hand, demographic crisis, and on the other hand, they are becoming more inward-looking, not, much less willing to engage outside the world.
Not necessarily xenophobic, but
Right.
and not racist. I think that's important to make note of, but not inherently open
Right.
to external inputs coming in to the country. So the second,
So can I?
please, yeah.
Okay, so in that sense, Korea, Japan are similar situation, right now. And I mean, the government recognize that they have to now import foreign talent. I think that's why, if you look at, Abenomics, for example, importing foreign talent was an important element. So now I think more than 300 international students coming to study in Japan or in Korea. But many of them leave after graduation while only working for a few years. Okay, so I think Japan recognized the importance of in adding more brain gain component to their portfolio. But with all due respect, with Japan and Japanese, it's fair to say that it's not easy for foreigners to live and work in Japan or also in Korea as well. So I think that's a main challenge, and how they can implement and manage a new policy of migration. I think that's a main challenge facing Korea, Japan, probably Taiwan as well.
Great. Excellent explanation. Now, the second country you explore is Australia. It's an interesting case study that I'd never given a lot of thought to. Could you basically say what B or Bs apply in the Australia case?
Right. So I think a lot of people were asking, why Australia? Because, they are much smaller in size than Japan, China, of course, in India. But also it's a part of Asia Pacific country. And I think in Australia, probably a major country in the region that utilize, brain gain very effectively. And as you know, until 1970s, Australia was pursuing what they call, white Australia. But they couldn't sustain population growth or economic development. And then they changed very radically into multiculturalism and importing foreign talent from non-European countries, especially Asia, led by China. So I think for Australia, foreign talent has been very crucial. I think in that sense, Australian model is almost opposite to Japan, because I think right now about 30% of Australian population was foreign born. And I don't think Australia can sustain its population growth or economic development without foreign talent. So in that sense, it's opposite to Japan, but still were able to achieve economic development.
It's a diverse population and a society that at least Asian immigrants see as welcoming and a safe, good place to not only study, but subsequently stay on and live. And you address, the value of that type of, kind of study and stay versus study and return. And now you also address some of the more recent anti-immigrant sentiment in Australia. Can you explain, how serious is that? What motivated that? And does that kind of, is the model being challenged?
Right. So I think for Australia, it's somewhat similar to this country. I think there are two challenges. One is, I wouldn't say necessarily anti-immigration, but politicization of migration issue. The other one, geopolitics or geopolitical tensions. So regarding migration, I think by and large Australians accept the importance of migration for their country. But I think some people saying that there are too many migrants and the cities are so crowded, housing price just going up. And then I think they believe that government can better manage migration issue. But then some politicians are really taking up this issue for their political agenda. So I think politicization of migration is one challenge, because migration is so central to Australian development. The other one, geopolitical tension, especially with China. And I think until the pandemic, Chinese were the largest incoming foreign talent. But because of tension with China, less Chinese coming in. I think now they're adding more Indian and people from Southeast Asia. So I think those are the challenges for Australian model. And I think especially the country was hit very hard by the pandemic, because you couldn't take anyone from outside.
Yeah, the impact of and you address this in the section on India and elsewhere, the impact of particularly China, the impact of the pandemic in terms of disincentivizing travel abroad, bringing people back home and hunkering down, and also to kind of create those prejudices or concerns about immigrants that would make countries like Australia and the United States and others less hospitable than they previously had been.
Right.
So on the China model, it's very interesting because you have a communist/socialist state that has been really open to the world for roughly about half of its post-Cold War existence now, right? and a model that seems to have thrust China to be a close competitor in terms of talent, technology, education with the United States. What is the model that China's pursued?
Right. So, if you go back to in history, when Deng Xiaoping took over power and pursuing reform, then he needed manpower because China was so isolated until then. So he was encouraging people to go outside and hoping that they could return after education. So I think initially Deng Xiaoping thought that they could bring back about 90% of those people, but in the end, only 10% came back to quite their disappointment. But I think from maybe 21st century, more and more Chinese were coming back to China. I mean, there are much more opportunity in China. Also, Chinese government implemented a lot of talent recruitment, programs like 10,000 talent programs. Okay, so I think China is an important case of brain circulation. Sending their talent abroad and bring back after education and employment. And I mean, this is not a new model. Actually, that's what Taiwan and South Korea pursued in the 70s and in
the Four Dragons.
80s. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's why those returning talents made a great contribution to China's economic development. I think that's why it became a source of tension with the United States because with Taiwan and South Korea, it's very small. Now, they're not going to compete with the United States. But in case of China, it's a big country. They'll bring back massive talent. And then, they will, apply what they learn, let's say from US or, abroad into their own development. So if you look at, many Chinese, companies, Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent, I mean, what they're doing very similar to what they learned from the United States. So I think that's why it became source of tension with the United States and how to manage this conflict over talent. I mean, that's a big issue, I think, for both U.S. and China these days.
When I look at it's kind of a curveball question.
Yeah, sure.
I've been doing Korea for 40 years, been interacting with Korean immigrants for 40 years, looking at trends in immigration, 60s and 70s, period of authoritarian leaders, political kind of authoritarian period. And so both in pursuit of economic and educational benefits for their children, also as pursuit of political freedoms to some degree. And as Korea democratized, the economy grew strong, a lot of Korean immigrants returned.
Right.
Because now it was no longer such a bad place to live.
Right.
It was a good place to live.
More opportunities.
Yeah, more opportunities. And so I kind of wonder, somewhat related to that question, the returning Chinese, are they becoming a force for social and political change in that they've been open to the outside world? They see the opportunities when you have freedoms, and these freedoms, economic freedom and political freedom, are not entirely separable. I mean, there's an overlap there. Do you see over time this type of circulation, Chinese coming abroad, learning, going back, will be transformative within the political and social realms in China?
I think my short answer is yes and no. I mean, certainly they brought a lot of changes to China, but I think CCP is also aware of that. I have my former student teaching at leading Chinese university, for example, and when they took their position, let's say 10 years ago, okay, they were encouraged. Almost they had to publish, good article in top English journals. But now they have to publish in Chinese as well, because now they have to show their commitment to China. Otherwise, they will get criticism. You're Chinese. How come you don't publish in Chinese? Okay, so certainly I think political atmosphere changed, significantly over the last 5 to 7 years. So I think that means that certainly they brought some changes to China, but CCP, I think, is aware that it doesn't go too far.
Right.
I think now it looks like they are trying to contain the potential. So that's sort of my observation.
That makes sense. With that standard model of if you're in the business community and the economic side, you can do what you want as long as you don't infringe
Right.
on the party and the political ideological side.
Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. So the fourth country is India. It's an interesting study. Please, what were you thinking?
Yeah,
Talk about India.
when I began this study, and I thought China and India pursued, very similar model. It's a huge country. They're still developing country, and then a lot of international students and migrants in the United States. But then in the end, I found that their model was very different because a lot of Chinese went back home and then working in business, technology, education, and so on. But a lot of Indian talent, they stayed. Okay. And, I'm teaching at university in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you come to Silicon Valley now, Indian presence is just growing and growing, day by day. And if you look at, top leaders of, big techs in Silicon Valley, they are just like Indian American. Many of them came to United States, just like myself, after college. Then they stay. Then they became so successful. I mean, if you look at the head of Microsoft, Google, or so they are all Indian Americans, and like at Stanford, the Indians are the largest source of foreign faculty. More than Chinese, mostly in business and engineering. So they didn't go back to India. But a lot of people, they are interacting with India, very, very well. So that's why India is a good case of brain linkage.
Right.
They didn't go back, unlike Chinese, but still they didn't cut their ties with home country. They are engaging very actively, and so far, unlike China, I think India has been complementary with the United States. But that's why there is much tension between India and United States. And I think, an important question to pose, I don't have any clear answer, but is India going to have tension with the United States, let's say 20 years later, after it further developed? I mean, that's something we might think about because looking back, when Japan was really challenged United States in the 80s, their tension between the two. Now with China, 20 years later, maybe with India, because India is moving very fast. It's now number 5. It might be number 4 and 3 pretty soon. So, but still, so far in the U.S. and Indian economy, they are complementary and not really competing against each other.
Yeah, it's interesting when you think about the tensions in the U.S.-PRC relationship in the economic domain, both economic coercion by China as well as economic security. This perception that large number of Chinese students come here, learn technology, either above board or surreptitiously, and then return, and there's large-scale IPO theft, threats to national security, as China seeks to gain some type of peer equality with the U.S. And so there's national security implications, geopolitical implications that you don't see as much as at play with India.
Not yet.
Yes.
At least not yet. But what I'm saying is that who knows 20 years later?
That's a fair point. And, at the very least, you are going to reach a point where the sheer number of Indians in very critical, high-paying job positions will be seen as somehow depriving, U.S. PhDs and masters, people of viable jobs in this future economy.
Yeah, because right now, if you look at proportion of Indians among H-1B visa holders, do you know what percentage of Indians? About 75%.
75%.
So in other words, they are benefiting from that, visa system, obviously. And then, of course, they're making contribution to the U.S. economy, to be fair.
So how do you see going forward? I must say, as I read your book, I sense a kind of positive view of globalization and knowledge diffusion that takes place through these processes. So peace and prosperity globally rises. That's kind of like the globalist dream, right? And there's a lot of people challenging the assumptions there. In particular, I don't know if they would say they see this as a zero-sum game, but any advantage China, for example, might get from some pursuit of brain gain or circulation is to the detriment of U.S. security interests, economic interests. And probably the U.S. alone is not out there in this regard. Other countries that see this. How do you see this over time moving, given the trends that you've seen, in particular over the past year in terms of U.S. immigration policy, anti-immigration sentiment, and concerns about things that otherwise might be, from a globalist perspective, good things?
Right. So, I mean, that's a big question. So let me briefly first about China. Obviously they are closing their door. So I think now less Chinese going out to study or work abroad. And I mean, some people are saying that China has a huge domestic market, so they can maybe sustain. But I'm a little skeptical because China was able to develop their economy by opening up not only their country but also actively engaging in global talent market. If they are retreating from that, I think it's going to hurt China. That's my sense. Okay, what about United States? I think U.S. situation is more complex, but still, I mean, I recognize some national security issue, and I mean there are some bad apples. I mean, I'm not denying that, but still, if you calculate benefit and cost, I mean, without foreign talent, can U.S. sustain its economy? I'm also skeptical, because I mean, once again, Silicon Valley is a good example. I mean, if you look at founders of NVIDIA, Tesla, Google, I mean, they are all immigrants. And U.S. was so attractive to global talent, universities and corporations. I mean, that's why we are able to attract, almost absorb global talent from the world. I mean, I think that's what made the United States very strong as today. But now, as you know, there are some issues with higher education, also migration. I mean, I'm not opposing to some refining or better managing migration. But at the same time, I think if we create anti-migrant sentiment, I think it's going to hurt United States, because people saying that, well, then we just better educate our American people, but look at like engineering department, medical school at Stanford, at Berkeley, right? I mean, without Chinese, Indian students, I don't know whether they can really sustain their lab or even in Silicon Valley corporations. So without them, can it sustain medical system in Palo Alto? I mean, that's an important question, because it's one thing to criticize, but then what are you going to do without them? I mean, that's that's a reality. It's not really political agenda. That's what we are facing, yeah.
The other case study I thought was the raid on the Korean workers at Hyundai, which subsequently, after the fact, did not shut down the project altogether and prevent the Korean engineers from coming in, but figured out how to do it the right way, understanding that those Korean engineers and specialists were needed. And so it kind of shows a degree of pragmatism and rationality that we're not going to shoot ourselves in the foot. too excessively.
I think that's exactly my point. Okay, it takes time to cultivate talent. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight. Okay, because you have to really educate for a long time, and I think it's right to trying to revive our manufacturing industry. I mean that's great objective, but I don't think we can do overnight. I mean now, TSMC, Samsung, Hyundai Motor, SK Hynix, they're building factories in the United States, but the infrastructure is very poor. And also, they don't have a good human resource at this moment to build those factories. Mm-hmm. So unless either we attract foreign talent or we really nurture and really train our own American people, it's not going to work. So I think it's one thing that, okay, let's take foreigners out. And then let's build our own, factory. But who's gonna do? Because in the end, it's the people. I mean, that's why in my book that talent policy is so fundamental to trade, industrial development, and all others. So I think right now, everyone talking about AI. I think competing for talent for AI will be more and more intense, and then whoever wins the race for global talent is going to prevail.
Right. And AI itself is going to probably revolutionize and impact a couple of the brains, like brain gain and brain train and linkage, because of now you can do so much in this virtual environment. Right. We talked about including a short discussion on North Korea here, and you can see not so much your relevancy, but the fact that North Korea is on so much on the margins. And you note in here that for the countries that really aren't in that classic capitalist state world, that this model doesn't really apply to them. Thoughts on North Korea and where they develop their talent and what their prospects are going forward?
So maybe going back to my 4 cases, North Korea is somewhat similar to Japanese model in the sense that they rely on homegrown talent. Right. But then the big difference is that Japan was engaged in global talent market, but North Korea is totally isolated. And I'm sure that North Korea got some training from maybe Soviet Union or Russia and China, but numbers are very small. But still probably they got some advantage knowledge or technology and skills and came back to make contribution. But I think by and large, my sense, North Korea relied on homegrown talent. But then, without really engaging global talent market, there's so much limitation. Right. But for North Korea, as you all know, probably leadership may know some importance of opening up, but they can't. Right. Because of a political reason. So I think that's a fundamental limitation for North Korea. And I don't see any major change in the coming years. They've
gotten really good, no pun intended here, in the cyber domain, so that they can do incredible things in terms of crypto theft and what have you, showing world-class levels of expertise. And I think that's probably in part, we've known from looking at North Korean S&T journals that if you're a scientist in North Korea, you're reading citations. The citations reflect an exposure to outside literature, and then what can be gained from being on the internet, having selective use of it. So they'll be able to maybe do more than they were in the pre-digital era. But nevertheless, the fact that they have so little interaction with those on the outside is going to limit. And so it's something to look forward to and see what North Korea might pursue in this regard in terms of breaking out of their largely pandemic-driven isolation that we've seen. Still only limited opening, and this could be one area. Gi-Wook, thank you so much for this. It's been a fascinating discussion. I really liked the book. I had absolutely no expertise in this area other than your classic 1980s Asia development theory, right? Chalmers, Johnson, et cetera. This is a great book. It's insightful, and I thank you for spending your time today.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you. And this is all for today's The Impossible State. Thank you.